despite the odds.
It was the neurologist's opinion that there was no hope.
Welcome to Sightings. I'm Tim White.
Next, a healer reaches out to coma patients with miraculous results.
I knew then that Peter was making an effort to recover.
Deciding when to remove life support from a loved one is an agonizing decision for any family. Roger Borde is a self-styled healer who claims he has the power to communicate with comatose patients and find out what they want. Airborne reporter and pilot Peter Peelgrane was Denver's eye in the sky. But on February 12, 1992, Peter's career came to a crashing halt.
His engine failed, and he didn't have anywhere to go but the reservoir. So it took them 45 minutes to actually effect a rescue, which they finally did with a rescue boat. And Peter had lost consciousness and was floating on top of the water. They airlifted him to the hospital. He didn't have a heartbeat for the first 45 minutes. When he got to the hospital, he went into surgery, and the doctors came out and told me that he'd been clinically dead. And he made it through the surgery and was in a deep coma.
Peter was a boisterous transplant from Australia, a family man, a fun-loving, joyous father of 5. It was hard to imagine that a man so full of life could now be on the brink of death. But he was.
The doctors told me that with the results of the EEG that the prognosis was getting worse and that I needed to start thinking about making a decision to either end his life or not.
Her decision was to put her husband's life in the hands of a man she had never met, Roger Borde.
I can't explain to you just exactly what I do, because in the 4 separate cases that I've worked with, they've all been different.
Roger Borde claims that he has used a unique psychic gift to successfully communicate with 4 separate coma patients.
All 4 instances, they were going to pull life support and let them die, and it was the neurologist's opinion that there was no hope.
Roger arrived about 10:30, and I said, well, why don't you get some rest and we'll go over in a few hours and be with him. And he said, no, it's really better if I start now. Then Roger put his hands on Peter and Peter's arm, and I laid my hand on his other arm. And all of a sudden, I got this really strange sensation of sort of electricity in my stomach, and I just thought, I can't deal with this right now. I can't. And so I said, well, I'm going to leave you alone, and I'm going to go back and try and get some sleep.
I sat in the room for 4 hours, doing my best to blank my mind. What came to me was to go over and to start talking to Peter about walking through a field of flowers. And I described to him what the flowers looked like, the smells. I described the surroundings, and then I said to him, I said, you know, Peter, when you're walking through a field of flowers, you have to move your feet. And that's when he began to move his feet under the sheet. I knew then that Peter was making an effort to recover and make contact.
The doctor came in that night and asked me if I'd made a decision, and I said, well, Peter's made a decision, and I think he's coming back.
For the next 4 weeks, Borde continued to communicate with Peter through directed visualization. Peter seemed to be responding.
When you have someone who is not able to move and someone who's not able to speak, and their focus of attention is elsewhere, to communicate with them, you have to be creative. You have to figure out some other way to communicate with them. My discovery was that there's a way of doing that energetically. What I was saying to him, which I did verbalize to him later, that I was there to help him to stay or go, but I needed to know what he was going to do.
But the 4 successful cases Borde has worked on do not convince the medical community that his technique works.
If someone's deeply unresponsive by nature of the definition, they don't respond to my questioning, nor to the nurses. It's, nor other people.
Dr. Philip Yarnell is one of Denver's leading neurologists. He believes that coma patients are neither physically nor mentally capable of responding to communication of any kind.
We think that they have hearing and that the transmission of sound from clicks in the ears to recordings on the brain are often intact. Now, whether they hear as we hear, so that we interpret sounds as voices or as the messages of loved ones, that we can't tell.
But some recovered coma patients claim that their personal experience has been just the opposite.
I had the experience that's classically described as the near-death experience, where you see the blinding white lights and feel the overwhelming sense of compassion and forgiveness and peacefulness.
In 1991, Mary Kay Blakely fell into a diabetes-induced coma. For 9 days, she lay in a New York City hospital while friends and family kept around-the-clock vigil. Unlike most coma patients, Mary Kay claims that she can recall the thoughts and feelings she experienced while she was comatose. She's chronicled her ordeal in this book, Wake Me When It's Over.
I imagined that I was in a prison and I spent the whole 9 days trying to figure out what I had done to land there. You lose all measurements of time. There's no day, there's no night. I felt no pain, I felt no air, I felt no breath. I felt no heartbeat. It was very relaxing. You wanted to stay in that state forever.
Mary Kay gives a lot of the credit for her recovery to her sister, who maintained a continuous one-way dialogue at Mary Kay's bedside.
She thought it was her personal mission to give me some reason to come back. So maybe it made a difference.
Dr. Arnold Mindell is a clinical psychologist who has spent 20 years studying the coma state. He challenges the mainstream belief that deep coma is synonymous with brain death. He believes it is simply an altered state of consciousness.
Years from today, people are going to look back on this period of medicine and dealing with comatose states, and they are going to say, my God, wow, we were making decisions to pull the tubes on this character without asking her or him, or not even trying to communicate with them. The goal is not to get the person to awake, and the goal is not to get the person to die. The goal is to follow nature.
I don't think that Roger is a prophet or a saint. I think that he has found a calm and a knowledge and a wisdom of the heart. He helped us. There's no question of that.
Never give up. Only until the individual in the coma states that they want to go, then I would say be responsible and follow their wishes and pull life support. But don't give up hope.
Every day he gets a little bit better, but the improvements are in millimeters. You know, they're not in feet or yards. They're tiny. And everyone is a hard-fought victory. And he amazes me how hard he works for things. But his sense of humor is intact. He still comes up with some great one-liners. And, you know, he's still here. And he's still part of us. And he's still here for us to love and to love us.
Healers like Roger Laborde and Dr. Arnold Mindell want you to know that they do not consider themselves an alternative to licensed physicians. Credible healers work with medical doctors to provide additional support. No one should rely on psychic healing without consulting their family doctor first.